Hello and welcome back to Beyond the Veil background information. Today we're doing a culture video which is strictly about the culture of the Veil universe that I have my stories in, and as always we'll do a little bit of a quote and then we'll just go straight into it because it's strictly the culture, so nothing really that fantastic with it. And we're on the subject of Veil television, so we're discussing Veil news today. So let's get into it. You need to get the camera sorted and the newscasters prepared. I know it's a bit of an early announcement, but I've got something big on hand and you're going to want this news all over the Vale tonight. Quote from the Viper King. When the television began in the Vale, one of the most popular programmes was the news programme on at 3, 6 and 10 at night. It was a brief 30-minute catch-up of anything important and would be half vampire related and half everything else. It was all in French, but Spells translated them for every language, and it was sponsored by the Volturi. So, a turned vampire named Camille, who was very pretty, would present the vampire aspects to keep others intrigued, and then a Seelie male called Gerald was the presenter of the rest of it. They were both very popular because they did not talk down to their audience, and they were succinct, showing the right level of emotion and always encouraging people to check the papers for more or go to relevant sources. They were very highly thought of, and they were both very comfortable in the job. In fact, they were oddly comfortable with each other, and when they were discovered to be a romantic couple, everything went to hell for them. There had been a concern upon television that none of them wanted salacious things that would make others think illegal activities were normal. At the time it aired in the 50s, laws were not permitting vampires to mix with other species to marry, so the thought of two co-hosts could be a couple and not the same species was considered obscene. It was more than enough for the Volturi to pull both beings off the air and cause an uproar that would later be dealt with through arguments in the governments before going to the noble circle. But they were always remembered for the simple, straightforward standard they set for news, and their replacements were eager to do the same, as were their competitors. As the market opened up, so the big newspapers in the Vale that were rivals and showing things from scandals to just weather began to realise they could hold news programmes. Money was being pumped in to try and get news programmes on that steered people to the papers and the opinions of different editors. In the American Vale, it was perfected. Different news channels could be seen to work for different political parties, with certain networks being well known as right wing, left wing, anti Vale, anti demon, anti human, and vampire only. The American Bell had made a point they would not accept the same levels of control and censorship of the old world, and so there every political group imaginable had a news program that worked for them with a basic format. Start with the important news, hit them with the bad news, and then give them good news at the end, preferably with a quirky note at the bottom. It was quick, fast, and gave the short clips of news that encouraged the public to turn to the magazines and papers for more. The African Vale then developed a much more sensible news programming in response to this, having panel shows attached to their programs where debates could take place with the presenter acting as the non-biased devil's advocate that worked out facts from both sides. They kept things measured, ensuring that there was no side that got too much information, ensuring there was no side that got too much time unless there were important things going on, and they soon became the most popular news program to be upon. If you were on one particular network, which was called Speak Through Me, a West African production, it became the place to go for an interview. They developed a full program that had short clips during the week and at lunchtime and in the evenings to keep people up to date. And on Wednesday, they would have a 3-hour program set into 3 parts: West African Vale news, particularly focusing around Nigeria and Ghana. Then there was the international news that discussed a good deal of events happening before the third part, classically called debate, where big topics were discussed with experts on either side of the four, but also people that were more in between in position too. It was a format many started to advertise as well as to copy, but everyone became aware of the main presenter, a whale leopard named Babatunde, who was not only jovial upon greeting people to the programme, but reported on some of the big events in the Vale, including getting an exclusive interview with the Vampire King on the new morality laws he had proposed and what he expected to achieve with them. The variety and development of different news programs began through the 70s, with every country getting their individual print news programs, but their manners of presenting were often different. Some maintained a straightforward and precise manner, but others tried to develop programs that were more kid-friendly or were a little more tailored to the different species. So sometimes they were a lot more biased. They were a lot more biased on opinions of things. Political interest, parties, and bias did flare through the news channels, and even today remains a problematic situation that has not been completely dealt with. Although some of the news channels are looked to as the more unbiased sources, many have become very political in recent years and also very anti-noble circle, which is not necessarily problematic, but for when it stokes up old hates and aggression. Recent years have often come with the problem of fake news, a concept from beyond the veil that has leaked over, many of it being produced from beyond the veil and scaremongering those within it. One of the biggest developments that was seen far more in the late 70s was live news straight from scenes, rather than in-studio broadcasts with phone calls from those at the scene. With the developments of the networking and the broadcast capabilities, reporters were soon being trained up to be on the scene of big events. Getting there could be difficult at times, but also being sent to important places for important meetings was just as necessary, and this became possible. Although initially the cameramen and reporters looked to be daredevils in the middle of crazy weather and crazy situations, many got injured, and so the networks began to train up all their field reporters in crisis management and how to be in emergency situations. Upon doing so, and upon wearing the vests and hats stating that they were press, there were less injuries, and curiously, they were able to get a lot closer to things. Being recognised as press with a camera also brought in people that wanted to talk to them exclusively, including dictators, cult leaders, murderers, and it was often necessary that the studio tried to have balance, not giving them the platform to bring more after them, but also to try and get their information. It was difficult, very difficult, and mistakes were often made, and dangerous people were able to conceal themselves somewhat and gain cult followings, but the news learned, and in the case of murderers, they did not report their name, they did not have interviews with them, but with their legal representatives. They stopped letting them be seen so no one could gain the notoriety, although it still occasionally happens. The internet has proven to be the biggest challenge to the veil news, although radio programs, newspapers, and people began to get news although radio programs and newspapers are still read. People began to get news not just from news outlets that had to compete and develop into 24-hour productions to discuss all topics. The Veillanders were starting to get more opinionated news that was not checked, and even the political party news on their channels were more restrained than some of the conspiracies that began to turn up. Alternative views that did not even make sense were offered online, and soon news programs had to be social media aware, and some of them took the time to read through messages and disprove the fake news that was often doctored images, as well as teach their viewers to use veil filters that could remove magical or demonic influences on things. Worse still, demons in hell were starting their own little news channels where they would warn of things that might be happening and insisting against other things. Veil news became less interesting to many, but still the channels continued because many still read and believe the television above others. Thank you for listening.